Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to today's webinar, The New Era of Student Search, Content Strategies for AI and Student Discovery. My name is Sarah Breyfogle. I'm CGS's Manager of Web and Electronic Communications. As folks are joining, I just want to go through a couple of logistics. So first, this webinar is being recorded. So you will get a recording of this webinar as well as a copy of the slide deck in your email in the weeks following the webinar presentation. Second, at the bottom, you will see that you have a Q&A function. You may have to hit the more to see it, but you should have a Q&A function. Please use that to submit questions at any point. When you have a thought, submit your question. We will get to those at the end. You are more than welcome to use the chat to discuss things with your fellow attendees. But if you have a question for the panelists, please use that Q&A function just so we can find it. And at this time, I'm going to pass this webinar over to Colton Bright, our Associate Director of Corporate Relations, to introduce our panelists.
Thanks, Sarah. Good afternoon, everyone. We are incredibly grateful for all of the thought leaders that will be contributing their time and insights to our Partner Innovation webinar series. Very excited to be able to kick off 2026 with these important conversations and all of this fantastic content. This is our first in the series, and the series will extend through the end of February. We'll have the other dates and details at the end of today's session, but I encourage you, as you're available and as the content is relevant, to attend as many of these worthwhile conversations as you are able to. So without further ado, I do want to turn it over to Marcus Hanscom, Senior Director of Client Success with Direct Development, to launch today's webinar.
Great. Thanks so much, Colton, and thanks, Sarah, for setting us up. And thanks to you all for joining us for this session. We appreciate being included and partnering with CGS, certainly an organization we feel really connected to, especially with our work as direct development, where 90+% of our clients are graduate schools. And we're joined by some really distinguished folks from the field. I want to pass it over to have them introduce you quickly. So Ariana, why don't you go first?
Hello, everyone. I'm so glad to be here. Thanks, Marcus, and thanks to the CGS group. I'm Dr. Ariana Belayan. I'm the Assistant Dean of Enrollment and Marketing for the Tufts University School of Medicine graduate programs in Boston, Massachusetts.
Great. And Sabrina?
So thanks, Marcus, and thanks to CGS for hosting this. Sabrina Jedlicka, I'm the Deputy Provost for Graduate Education at Lehigh University, and I am also a long-term faculty member in the College of Engineering at that university. So I bring that perspective as well.
Great. And I'm Marcus, as you all heard. I am on at least the dark side, as we joke about it colloquially, on the vendor side, but I've only been on the vendor side for 2 years. Prior to that, I was 17 years in enrollment management, and 16 of those were in graduate enrollment management. So it's a space that I'm near and dear to my heart, and certainly connected with NAGAP as well. For those of you who are graduate enrollment folks, you might be familiar with NAGAP, and certainly something that Ariana and I in particular have invested a lot of time and certainly want to deepen that connection with you all in the future as well. So I want to talk to you about, I'm going to give you some kind of teachings here as we get started, and then I'm going to pass it over to Ariana and Sabrina to hear about their experiences in implementing some of the tactics we're going to talk about and what the outcomes have looked like for them in graduate schools. And so what we're talking about largely is kind of the foundational piece of what we call a sustainable enrollment marketing program. And a lot of schools live in this space of just putting out a bunch of ads. Think billboards, newspapers, Spotify ads, radio ads, you name it. So a lot of really paid efforts that are just designed to sell and be in front of people and push. Whereas we are talking more today, and what's the foundations of an inbound enrollment marketing program, which we'll talk about, of kind of those organic means of how do we create magnets that pull leads in, that drive quality and value, and get them things that are interesting to them, both about your school and about their discipline, to really engage them and deepen the relationship that you have with them throughout their search process. So let's start first with how students are searching and finding us. And I know some of this is fundamental, so forgive the kind of foundational nature of this work, but you know students are searching for you on Google and on various social media channels, YouTube, and so on. But how that's pivoted now is we have so many students using AI. And AI is, of course, the buzzword of the day and so many ways of using it. But students are increasingly using ChatGPT, Gemini, Perplexity, Claude, all of those generative engines to help them with their search, provide information about the programs that might fit certain criteria, and actually talk to it like an advisor. And in some ways, it's kind of replacing the admissions counselor. And I say that in a hesitant way as somebody who spent most of my career in admissions, because obviously there's so much value in that one-to-one relational piece. So there's a delicate balance on how we use AI to acquire students, but then still enhance the one-to-one relational need for our enrollment management offices that are still very critical to the relationships that students need as they're selecting schools. So one thing we've learned, we've been doing organic work for decades at Direct Development, but overwhelmingly schools are still getting a lot of organic traffic. So it's not like organic traffic is disappearing by any stretch. AI is not replacing the traditional search engine, but it's adding another layer to that, and it's making us be a lot more strategic and sophisticated on how we appear in search engines, but also position our content to come up in those AI engines that students are increasingly using. So while that organic traffic is still a big part of the work that you're doing, it is declining unless you're actively feeding that animal and really changing your tactics, thinking about code. There's a lot of kind of technical but content related pieces that allow you to appear in those organic searches. Organic being somebody goes to Google, types you in, and it's the blue links that come up beyond the sponsored links, beyond the AI overview, those links that are kind of on first page. And when we talk about kind of results pages, so if you see SERP here, that search engine's results page, that's the bulk of the links that are coming up on that first page. Students often aren't digging. Think about our own search behavior. We're not digging 2, 3, 4 pages in on Google to get the answer we want. Chances are, if you're not on the first page, oftentimes students aren't getting there. There's often a few outliers, but it's not a regular part of the process. So how search has been the same as students are still overwhelmingly going to Google and asking a question, or going to AI and asking questions about a discipline, but they don't necessarily know the programs that somebody offers. So if I'm going in, so I was at Roger Williams University most recently, had a forensic psychology master's program. That's a relatively unknown brand, at least on a national level. It's a regional school. So for students to type in Roger Williams forensic psychology program, it's probably unlikely for most of the population unless they're local to the campus. But they are typing in forensic psychology master's program. So how can I position Roger Williams to be answering that question? And in the data that we have for direct development across all of our clients, close to 90% of your organic rankings, so those blue links below the sponsored listings, are coming from off-branded keywords where they're not putting your school name in front of that keyword. So that's really important for how you position the content that you provide. And it's not just, hey, look at my program at X university, but it's instead, how can I provide resources or content related to the field that positions my institution as a thought leader and as a supporter and a provider of that content. So we're seeing organic search change. You all have seen this before. The AI overview is coming up the majority of searches on Google. What's nice is the AI overview is also attributing where it's getting its information. So I know a lot of folks kind of with some trepidation approach the AI overviews and go, is this really accurate? Let me double check. And so you have these links that are immediately underneath the overviews themselves, and also that right side. Of this is that, so we're a HubSpot partner. It's an automation platform, marketing automation platform. And they have been doing some research and found that 60%, so close to 2/3 of Google searches are ending without a click. So students are typing in. I don't need to go further. So that's problematic for schools who aren't positioned for AI. If students are stopping there, they're just never seeing your school at all. And you spend a lot of effort on improving your website to make sure that it's prominent for those students. So let's get in the weeds a little bit about some of these important, I call them the acronyms, the kind of the alphabet soup of search optimization. You've probably heard of SEO, search engine optimization. It's been around a long time. There have been a lot of different tactics that migrate over time to how you position for the algorithms like Google to position your content and say, this answer is relevant to that student search. So make sure that that link comes up. So that's largely what search engine optimization is about, is making sure that your web pages appear in those blue links on Google. But what we're finding is that SEO Foundation has also been incredibly helpful in getting into the AI overviews and some of the other generative engines. They have to source their information from somewhere, and those that are optimized are starting to be pulled into that. Now, there's AI tactics that will plug into that I'll talk about in a moment, but that foundation is critical. So sometimes we have schools that come to us and say, I want to be in AI, and then we go and look under the hood, and they're doing very little on SEO at all. So they have to first start with building that foundation of SEO work, and then AI on top of it. It's not just checking a box or flipping a switch and all of a sudden you're in AI. You have to actively feed that. And so how you get into that in terms of search engine optimization, ultimately be ranked on that first page in those blue links, is through a number of kind of core items. One is optimizing your pages itself, and we won't go into the technicals of that today. But also things like blogging and what we call a pillar page. So that's, in SEO speak, is kind of a really lengthy, meaty, kind of like a blog, but it's on a specific topic or discipline, and you have a lot of links. It's very information rich. It has resources and things, and it's optimized for these generative engines and AI to pull in that information and say, that thing that Lehigh is doing, you need to go read about that there. They're telling you a lot about data science or physical therapy or something, or you're learning about the MPH program at Tufts. And then the other thing that you need to do is create this web of content. So oftentimes websites are created as kind of silos. So if you're sitting on a mechanical engineering program and you just have links to apply or request information, that's what everybody's doing. It's the cell. But how can we connect them to other resources? So maybe it's faculty research, maybe it's conferences you're presenting at, maybe it's a guide you've developed to careers in mechanical engineering. All of this content has to be interlinked in kind of this web, and the wider that web is and the more interlinking that happens, the more value you gain in your search engine results by having that interlinking and deeper content, essentially. So that library gives you a lot of value. So here's an example of one of our clients. We developed a blog post on classical versus modern education. And so University of Dallas, we look at keyword research and figure out what's being searched, how difficult it is to rank for it. So if there's a lot of schools that are producing content on a particular topic. So in this case, this topic was relatively easy to rank for. And there's kind of a misnomer that SEO takes a long time to really work, 6 to 12 months in some cases. But what we're finding is, now that the AI engines are part of all this, we're seeing movement from SEO in just a month or two, and sometimes a matter of weeks in the AI engines, because they're actively crawling content that's being published. And that frequency of publishing and changes in the content that you provide is actually flagging AI engines as something that's healthy about your site, that you're actively producing a lot of good content and you're seen as a thought leader. So when you're positioning this appropriately, and some people say to me, well, isn't a blog so 2005? Well, the reality is that meaty long form content is just like ingredients for the AI. It's just they're taking a buffet of all the information that you have on your site, and you have these lengthy pieces that are structured appropriately and tell them what your content is about. They're using that to feed their answers within the engine. So ideally, if you're doing this right, this will help both in SEO, and you see in this case a first ranking about this particular topic. You're also seeing an AI overview, and they're getting a link over on the right side. So when this works all correctly and well, that's the type of visibility you can get. And so speaking of blogs, this is another client, but this is just a sample of how that keyword growth can happen over time with the really meaty blog, good content that you can leverage your faculty and students for. You can talk about discipline-specific content, things that are not just a biography necessarily, although student stories and testimonials are helpful. We're also talking about content that's beneficial to a student about their discipline, careers, education they need, salaries, and so on, maybe research. And if you do this well, you'll see this kind of what we like to call the hockey stick graph that starts really small, but all of a sudden you're driving traffic. And these numbers that you see here, in the middle, so on average, this particular client was getting about 440 people in a month, so that traffic in the middle, and that was a growth of nearly 110%. And the equivalent of that traffic cost, if you were to go pay ads to get that same traffic, it would cost close to $3,000. So this is essentially free traffic because the school invested in a blog and SEO strategy, and we've seen that across our clients. So here's the alphabet soup that I promised you. And you can see this little diagram at the top on how this kind of fits in. SEO is kind of that foundational piece. That's really the organic, the blue links underneath the ads. It's optimizing keywords, headers, page structure, the things that you all are probably likely doing in some capacity with your marketing departments on campus within your web pages. Beyond that, then we have three other acronyms for you to think about that are kind of new on scene over the last year or two. First being answer engine optimization. This is, think of the answer engine as basically the equivalent of AI overviews in Google. And that really responds well to where you have like FAQs on your website, direct Q&A formats. So it's like, what can I do with a degree in X? And then you answer that question. Google sees that and goes, oh, somebody's answering that question. Somebody's asking that in Google. Let's match them together. It's also schema, which is a technical code. It's basically like Cliff Notes in your HTML to tell the crawlers what your page is about. Clear and concise content blocks. I talk to people, it's like formatting a research paper. You know, if you want to make sure that you're telling a logical story in order and it's broken up appropriately by topic and subtopic, the types of headings you use, those things are all valuable in your SEO and AEO efforts. Beyond that, then you've got generative engines, which that's where you're in a platform like ChatGPT, Perplexity, even Gemini, or Claude. And that really rewards you for topical authority. And that's where I love that your faculty can be a really big piece of that. So the more that you're having faculty quoted, especially if you get some earned media outside of what you're doing, talking about their research and conferences they're participating in, the depth of your content, all of these things are really helpful for the generative engines. The last one, you don't have to do too much independent of everything else. If you're doing the other three well, you're really feeding all that animal. LLMO is really just the giant library. Think of it as the database behind all of these first three things. And that powers all of the bots and the generative engines that you have available to you. But one thing that we run into on the academic side, and this is challenging with our clients, you know, obviously on the grad side, faculty and administrators work much more hand in glove on program-specific content and helping grad students get to the right programs, right fit students, all of that. The trouble is that AI rewards clear and concise language. So catalog pages can be tricky. More of that academic speak. I know sometimes schools really try to lean into things being said a particular way. And while we certainly respect that, I just caution you on living too much in that space and not thinking about your website being the front window to what you offer. And so if that's your front window and getting people engaged and getting people there and visible, then you can serve up some of the deeper academic content, but keeping things concise and simple really help these efforts a lot. So in short, AEO, answer engines, drive the AI overviews. SEO drives that lower spot behind the paid ads. And if you think about our own use of Google, many of us are skipping those paid ads at the top. We're going down to the blue links or we're using AI overviews. Students are the same way. So that over-reliance on just paying for ads, which schools have done ad nauseum for years, is actually hurting a lot of schools. There's a lot of competition there. There's a lot of wasted spend. So these opportunities to position in organic ways help get you in front of students where they trust those spaces more. They trust the AI overview. They trust those blue links at the bottom more than where they know you're paying. And what we've learned from the AI overviews, there's higher click-through rates up there. They're featuring multiple sources. So it's not like MIT is going to drive every answer or Harvard or Yale, pick your pedigree school. It's going to be a mixture of schools. And in some cases, I've seen small schools, small brand schools, position well in those AI overviews because they're outperforming those schools on AIO or AEO and SEO tactics. They're also selective. So there's 18 million plus domains available for organic search results. Only about 275,000 of them are featured in AI overviews at a given time. So it's those schools, those brands that are really positioning their content well, that are getting rewarded for that. And overwhelmingly, if you're doing that work well, you're going to get both the AI overview and an SEO feature, or a top ranked page within the top, usually top 5, maybe top 10 at most, as long as you're getting AI overviews in there as well. So then I just wanted to share briefly about generative engine optimization in practice. So this is where you're trying to position content for the Claude and Perplexity and ChatGPT. And so these are looking at relevancy. You also see these two on the left. This is for the Simmons School of Education at SMU, Southern Methodist University. They're looking at blog content as well. They're looking at your page content on your website. They're looking for things that are credible so that you're actually talking about rankings. If you're ranked, you're talking about faculty, different faculty and their experiences. There's quotes. Oftentimes, if there's relevancy of connected professional partners or somebody that's prominent talking about your programs, looking for quotable information that they can say, oh, recently ranked by as the #1 city for sports business. That's gold for the generative engine. So it's looking for those kind of nuggets where there's something really distinct and meaty about your programs, and then bringing that up to students here. And if you're doing that right, this is exactly the type of result that we were hoping for and got for SMU. This particular prompt, this was ChatGPT, might be small on your screen, but the prompt was, I want to work in sports marketing or organizational management, but I don't know where to start. I have a bachelor's degree in business. Should I get a master's degree at all? And what options are there in Texas? And because of the positioning that we had done through all the things you just saw on that last screen, they are coming up as the #1 good program option in this particular query. And it's not something that we're paying for. It's just we're just negotiating our content in different ways, producing new content that's helping them. That's not us paying for an ad, because these engines aren't allowing us to pay for ads at this point. So that's not how we're doing this. So let's talk about in practice, and I'm going to give you an opportunity to hear from Sabrina and Ariana. But this is a different client, but this is how we made some optimizations for a particular blog post. So just so you can see how this works in practice in general. So this was one particular blog post. We had written it traditionally, had a image at the top, had a question that was, what are the top 5 things you can do with a degree in economics? And so we had headers and text and the usual things. And then we said, well, that's not positioned well at the moment for AI, because we had done it just with an SEO lens. So we made those changes in April of this past year. And within just a couple of months, we had grown not only significantly in overall keywords, but notice that we had 3 SERP features. SERP features include the AI overviews. They also include the people also ask segment, those types of things. They went from 3 in April 2025 to 19 in July, so just within a few months, and even gained a top 3. They gained a couple of top 10s. So they have more visibility there that just with optimizations changed how many students were actually getting to their content and engaging with it. So that was a significant change without much effort, and again, didn't require us to pay for ads. So I wanted to share here a little bit about the work that we did first with Tufts. Tufts, we came in, we worked with Ariana a couple of years ago for the DPT section of their website, and gave them some pretty comprehensive recommendations for that work. So I'd love to have her talk to you just a little bit about what that process was like, what her team did as a result of that, and what the lift was like, and then share here, and she can reflect a little bit on the performance of what that's actually done for them. So Ariana, can you talk a little bit more about that?
Absolutely. Thanks, Marcus. So yes, Tufts School of Medicine graduate program is specifically for the Doctor of Physical Therapy, or DPT programs, of which we have 3, Boston, Phoenix, and Seattle, engaged direct development in a comprehensive look at our SEO optimization, and spoiler alert, it was pretty poor performance, or in some cases non-existent performance, which I'll get to on the slide you can see right now. So basically, it wasn't hard to prioritize pages that we wanted to identify pages to prioritize, because we had not done an effort like this before. We had limited analytics related to our own internal tracking of our web traffic. And we wanted to see where we might get the most bang for our buck with calls to action, where there are pages that direct people to click on apply now, drive them to virtual event registrations, et cetera, et cetera. But the bottom line is direct development was really the key in advising us on which areas that we wanted to concentrate in on our website to get the best results. It was a significant lift. It is manageable if it's prioritized due to its importance. If there is a staff member, in my case, a marketing on the ground communications manager with expertise or the ability to train and own the project, because it's one thing for direct development to do the work, it's another thing to implement it, and ultimately that's how you see the results. I posit that because that staff member applied the changes right away, we were able to capitalize on the performance results I'm about to detail and have the initial outcomes that we have related to our down funnel numbers, applications, etc. So these are, Marcus mentioned it was a couple years ago. So we are in our second cycle since this was developed. And you can see in the bulleted notes, some keys that I want to identify are we went up 31% in unbranded keywords from 2024 to and beyond. Again, this is because my staff member implemented these elements right away. You'll see there are new in the previous category for 4 different keywords, including DPT. We weren't ranking at all for DPT for our DPT programs. I don't have to explain to you how detrimental that is. And now we are 4th. This is all due to direct development's identification and my staff members' prioritization and implementation of the suggestions on the back end to optimize the work that we're doing here. It is a heavy lift, as I mentioned. So I have some advice for those approaching the work from the top. I suggest engaging experts. Direct development is one of them. It does involve an investment of resources, time, and money. Someone needs to be on staff to implement suggestions and do it promptly. I suggest embracing AEO, GEO, and all that alphabet soup. SEO is baseline nowadays. Again, this is 2024 data. Excitedly, I'm happy to report that we have seen really, really positive movement in our funnel numbers in the 2025 cycle and now the 2026 cycle. And the biggest change we made is this work that you're looking at right now. Our inquiries were up, our applications were up, and our ultimate enrollment was up. So we are getting in front of, or people are aware of us, and I can credit this effort. So I suggest implementing it, then analyze and tracking your numbers down funnel over the year and beyond to determine any efficacy. Thanks.
Great. Thanks, Ariana. And I know one thing, I'm throwing you another question I don't think I talked to you about before, but you're investing significantly on the digital marketing front. So you are doing paid advertising, but you're also doing organic. Have you felt like the combination of those two things has been the best source of ingredients, or did you feel like that, if you had just invested more digital dollars, we tend to prescribe that you do both. And do you feel like that's having efforts for that's having bearing fruit for your school?
Yes, especially on the graduate level. This is not a market like the undergraduate level, at least in competitive health sciences programs, where you can put all your ducks in, or whatever analogy you'd like to use, in paid search. So by diversifying the approaches, including this back-end web work that you would do here, you are diversifying the initiatives, you are creating the best setup for success, and you're having the best splash on a really competitive market.
I think one of the benefits is, in disclaimer, we are not Tufts' current digital marketing partner. But my understanding from a conversation we had, Ariana, that you're thinking about reducing your digital ad spend in the coming year. And it seems usually a byproduct of doing the organic well is that you don't have to be so reliant on the digital ad spend. Was that part of the conversations you've all had when you talk about reducing budget?
Yes. So we have a healthy budget. It's about the how we spend it. And it's about thinking, are digital ads and throwing all the money into paid search ads, Google, etc., working for us? The answer is no, not really. That's the initial go-to. But by taking a step back and being willing to take a risk and diversify and question what we're doing, we are able to be fairly as confident as possible that we're going to see better marketing and therefore better numbers, enrollment number results ultimately out of a multi-channel effort that is inbound content driven and not only paid ads. So it's a combination of all of the above that Marcus has mentioned, including in-house organic posting across platforms, content, we'll get to some inbound content in a little bit, and things like SEO and AEO.
Great. And have you noticed you mentioned that enrollment numbers are up. Have you noticed anything with your team about quality. Has quality changed at all?
Interestingly, one of the DPT programs that we were seeing a quality question mark in the applicants to admit and the ultimate admit and enroll confidence in the ability to succeed has increased this year. So in an N of 1 year or 1.5, we're a little over halfway through the cycle. With one of our programs, I can say that it has been a quality increase.
Good. I think that's one of the helpful pieces of good SEO, if you're doing it well, and AEO for that matter, that you're putting out more quality information, not only about the discipline, but also your programs, and it's refining the right fit information that are helpful for students to really self-select and determine that, yes, Tufts is indeed the best place for me. And they're able to decide then at the front end because they have a lot more information in front of them, rather than that being kind of gate kept behind an admissions counselor, which there's so much stealth behavior where students, I'm sure this is shared among the attendees here today. 2/3 of my students that were applying at Roger Williams were stealth apps. They never talked to our admissions counselors. They weren't part of our system otherwise, and they just showed up as an applicant. And that's particularly predominant. It's happening a lot with those that have CAST systems. So a lot of you in the health sciences that have central application systems, there's a lot of stealth behavior. And so if you get them in the pipeline earlier because they're connecting with better content and you're able to connect with them and nurture them more, typically that results in a move in the needle on quality of applicants and better fit applicants. So I'm glad to hear that. That's encouraging, and hopefully that's an outcome that our attendees will see as well. So let's pivot to Sabrina. Sabrina is from Lehigh University, as you heard earlier, and we actually just started working with Lehigh this past year, so a little bit newer. And so she's been kind of more in the throes of the actual process of implementing now and kind of seeing some early results with her work there, and certainly has her toe in the faculty, as she shared as well. So I think the academic and administrative nature of her work is interesting in how we can implement this type of work. So I'd love to hear from you, Sabrina, about what that process has been like for you, and maybe working with the academic side of the house and implementing these types of changes where there otherwise might be resistance to changing academic pages and so on.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. So it was about a year ago. I'd been in this role for about a year at that point, and I started to ask myself, how findable are we? And the reason that that mattered to me is I had a hunch that Lehigh was leveraging its brand name far more than we might need to or might want to with respect to graduate programs. And part of this is just simply by looking at our admissions data across the university, looking at who was applying, what universities they were applying from, where in the world they were applying from, and how they were finding us. And so combining our own Google Analytics traffic with admissions information, looking out across all 5 of our colleges, which are a series of distributed, disconnected web pages for the university, and then a central web page which houses a great deal of information about the university itself. And so it was that hunch that had me reach out to direct development and say, okay, I have a hunch. Help me prove that hunch. And so they said, well, what programs are you interested in? So in the back of my head, I'm like, which programs have the highest possibility for enhanced enrollment, given where we're at in terms of both the kind of national climate, in terms of job search, et cetera. Okay, so I handed them a handful of programs, at least one in each of the colleges. And in some cases, more than one in the colleges that are rather large at our university. And their findings very strongly confirmed my hunch. We rely very, very heavily on our brand's name. And I, in fact, had at least one program, I will not name which one, that you could not find unless you added Lehigh to the search. And so this program had been struggling with enrollment, had been struggling with applications, not just enrollment, but pure volume of applications were in the single digits for a program that across the nation would be receiving applications at a university of our size in the 50 to 70 range, right? For, again, what is a small program? But when you're talking about an order of magnitude difference in application volume, obviously there is a challenge there that we need to overcome. And so what I did is I took this information, right? I went to direct development entirely on my own, did not loop in any of my colleagues in the colleges because it was just a hunch, just a little experiment that I wanted to try. So I took the information that direct development provided and I connected with each of the web developers as well as the deans in the colleges and provided them with the findings. I said, these are some of the easy things that you could do today that could influence your enrollment opportunities for the future. And so this would have been roughly June, July of 2025. We also had a college that didn't have web development capacity. And so direct development worked with us on implementing those suggestions directly in our web environment. And, I'm thrilled to report that that particular college, you no longer need to know that that program is a Lehigh program to be able to find it. We rank very high now in terms of search words. And that program also has started to feed the AI summary around information related to the program of interest. And so we're taking kind of that approach across all 5 of the colleges in the ways that make the most sense. Unfortunately, one of our colleges is going to have to do a rather sizable remake of their web environment to be able to implement changes because of how the different modules in our web servers were implemented in that series of URLs, if that makes sense. And so it's been a pretty big lift, both in terms of navigating the politics of all of it. People own web pages. People are really proud of content that they put on web pages. And so when you tell them, hey, this web page is doing you no favors, approaching that in the way that appeals to them, usually through data, usually through projections, and almost always through offering to help. Right. And so I offered resources to each of the colleges to think about the implementation of these needs. And that certainly helped us move the needle. As soon as they realized that the university was bought into their need, they recognized that they could also buy into that need. And so in terms of, again, other outcomes that we are starting to realize, the program that only had a single-digit number of applications is now at the national average for application counts. I just checked this morning. A new program that we launched is doing significantly better than any other new program that we've launched historically in my time in graduate enrollment, which is about 5 years now between the College of Engineering and my current role. And so that program is already in the double digits of applications, which is large for a Lehigh program. And I'm really looking forward to seeing where else we can take this. Some of the commentary that Marcus provided around blogs and pillar pages, like my head is spinning with all of the ideas that I know we need to work on institutionally across the programs that have, this is a kind of a crude way of saying it, but the biggest bang for the buck, right? Which ones do we need to focus on because our enrollments are not reaching our goals, but those enrollments have the capacity to reach our goals because of national data. And so I use data in every possible way that I can to get these sorts of things moving at Lehigh. And I was just really, really glad my hunch was right because that's an easy thing for me to then initiate change around.
That's great. And that certainly worked out well. And I shared a couple of them here that folks can see in real time. As speaking of data, this is really a good data point. And I alluded to SEO feeling slow. At least that was kind of at least reputation that it had. But in just a few months, we went from virtually nothing to 52 keywords in this particular instance. Now this is early, so we'll see that spike and take off more time. And then looking at College of Health, which we worked on their subdomain, they've doubled their top 3 rankings. So that's those ones that are the blue links underneath the sponsored ads, but they're also getting 52 SERP features. So that includes AI overviews. So they've done well in just a short amount of time because they only started implementing these optimizations from us over the last couple of months. Have you found any, Sabrina, any political navigation issues with how you prioritize the programs, any kind of a why you supporting them versus us conversation, and how did you navigate that?
I mean, absolutely. As soon as a couple of program directors who happen to be colleagues and friends of mine realized that their program wasn't receiving as much attention as another, they called me out on it. Like, well, why don't we get information on our pages? And I said, that will be coming. We just needed to start with a grouping of programs that stood the biggest chance of improvement this year. Again, I pointed to data. And so if I see that the job postings in a specific field are going down, and search volume in that same field is going down, that's probably not the best place to invest right now. It doesn't mean that we're not going to invest because your program is important. But right now, the metrics are showing a dip. And so that dip means that I have to focus on the ones that have an upward trajectory, and recognizing that your program will come, just not first. And I haven't lost any friends. I probably have lost a few beer invites, but no friends yet.
Well, that's good. I mean, certainly you're approaching it in a way that sounds very data informed, and for lack of a better term, have at least a loose mental rubric for how you're approaching those discussions. I know I always struggled when we were trying to make those decisions at my prior institutions, and you're thinking about time, and you mentioned how quickly something can actually move the needle. So what programs have the propensity to do that, have some sort of demand. And you also talked about the bang for the buck, the revenue issue. And, if you have programs that are really driving strong revenue, that helps offset maybe losses or these kind of mission-centric programs that you might keep that aren't going to be big revenue programs, but you have to support them otherwise. So to get those really pumping, get that engine moving, and then you can support those other programs is a really good approach. So I'm glad to see that you're having those types of conversations and the results so far. So thank you for that. So we're going to wrap up kind of our last section here, and then I want to make sure if anybody has questions, please feel free to start putting them in the box, and we'll get to them. I want to share briefly that this is kind of I'm going to use the dirty word in higher ed of sales. So this is the sales pipeline. And so many schools live in this middle place of saying, look at my program, we're great, look at our rankings. Students in that part, they know Lehigh, they know Tufts, they know your schools, they might know your programs, and they're weighing their options. But where it's a missed opportunity is kind of some of the examples that I shared to you earlier, where somebody's saying, what can I do with an electrical engineering degree? Or do I need a doctorate in physical therapy? Or what do I need to become a physical therapist? They're exploring, they're trying to discover what they're going to do. And since so many schools are just about flag waving their own programs, they miss this whole segment of the market that's at the top, that's just fishing. They're just trying to find you. And so that's where unbranded keywords, as we talked about before, are really critical. And so focusing on that will help you a lot. Schools also need to focus at the decision stage, and we talk about developing content that's like, why should you select Lehigh's program in X, so industrial engineering? And so you give them content that's specific about that, and you try to push them over the finish line. So instead of just focusing on content that aligns with selling your program, instead, how do we help students with making decisions, understanding their discipline, understanding their costs, making a decision to actually pursue you? And by starting at that top of the funnel, you're building some more affinity and awareness of your brand, but it's showing that you're helping and that you care about the student at that stage of their journey. So this is Gabby from our team. She allowed us to use her likeness here, so we're not doing that against her will. But think of this as the consideration stage. She's like, I'm interested in the program that you have in forensic science at DD University. So she knows what she wants. She knows that we offer it. So she's a consideration student. But let's turn it back a little bit. What do people with a forensic science degree actually do? So she knows she wants forensic science, but she's confused. She loves CSI. She loves Law and Order. She sees all this sexy stuff on TV, and it's like, I want to do that. But what do they actually do? And as somebody who worked with forensic science programs, I know there's a lot of confusion around that because of CSI. But then if you dial it back even further, Gabby's going, what even is forensic science? And then can you actually write a blog, or can you create a guide or a pillar page that really goes deep into what the discipline is? And then because of that content, you get positioned in answer engines and on SEO, and you're becoming a thought leader, and you're seen as somebody producing good content. So you see how this content starts building a story. You're talking about what is forensic science? Okay, I like that. What do they actually do? And now, okay, I see DD offers that. I'm going to go and pursue that program and request information and apply. So really trying to build content across that funnel is absolutely critical. Then once you get students hooked in and they're saying request information, and admissions offices are just chomping at the bit. I want somebody to raise their hand and say, I want to know about Lehigh, right? And then you're ready to call them, or you're emailing them, you're putting them into a drip in your CRM. But then how do we get them to apply? And applying, you really need to build that content that helps them understand, why is it valuable to go forward with Lehigh? I see that the program sounds good, but why? What are the outcomes? What can I see that alumni are doing? What really makes it so that as I'm on the fence about applying, I go, you know, it'd be a mistake if I don't apply to Lehigh, and you give them content that answers that question. Similarly, you might be admitted to 3 different programs, and you're trying to evaluate how can you then develop content there that it's not just I admitted the student, sent them their admit letter, we gave them a friendly phone call and congratulated them, and now we just pray they come. We instead are building content that is reinforcing value through that part of the process so that they actually decide to enroll. So here's how this, I'm going to go quickly, but this is how this kind of came together for Bard. Bard is one of our clients. And so you see how this is very top level, not Bard selling on the first one there. How do I work for the UN? 3 things you should consider. That was, spoiler alert, that's a query that people are often typing into Google. They're saying, how can I work for the UN? So we built a blog that answers that question. Then we start going into, all right, so the student is thinking about a degree that might align with this. Master's in Sustainability, we talked about that. Then after that, they know that they want that kind of degree. Now it's like Bard's MBA in Sustainability. So our product answers the question that you seem interested in based on all these things you've done. And then at the end, you're now giving them bottom funnel decision stage content that's about what can you expect from your internship? What type of experience will you gain from doing all these things? So that's how that content kind of comes together. But I encourage you all to think about how can you drive value first rather than the sell and flag waving and say, come to my MBA. And really not all content is optimized for search. So many schools produce these PR pieces. Look at how great we are. That's all valuable. And we're not discouraging you from doing that, but you can see how that's different from this how to work for the UN blog. This is very meaty. It gives information. It's not selling Bard. It's talking about the UN and the various education you might need or the experience that you need. There's links to external resources as well as internal resources. It's also sending them to a guide on sustainability that we've built for Bard, and it's branded with Bard, but it's not selling Bard directly yet until you get deeper in, and then the students read through all this and like, oh, this sounds really good. Now I'm going to request more information because, by the way, Bard has this program. This sounds really cool. So I can do this UN thing by what they have here. So we've led horse to water, right? Rather than just dumping the thing in front of them and saying, check out the MBA in Sustainability at Bard. I'm like, whoa, I don't even know who Bard is, or I don't even know about sustainability. That might not be the degree that I want. We're leading them there with helpful content. So when you build content for your searches, it's your website, as we've talked about, it's blogs, pillar pages, there's interactive ebooks that could be crawled. We can talk more about the specifics of those things. Thinking about any podcasts or videos, especially if your faculty are doing them, do you transcript them? Are they actually part of what's on your website? Can people crawl and read through that? It helps with accessibility for one, but it does have AI as well because you have all that content available to them. And if you're doing this right, you're layering in content at each of those 3 stages we've talked about. And all of that slowly is just giving it's another feather in your cap as you go through. And then the student's going, I need to apply to Bard because I've read all these great things and it's clear what I want to do. So I want to have Ariana quickly just reflect on, these were 3 guides that our team developed for them. And I just wanted her to talk a little bit about why they wanted them and ultimately how they're using them with their prospective students right now. Because these are These are PDF ebooks essentially to talk about their various programs.
Hi again. So yes, remember when I said that inbound marketing or content piece, we had not had anything like this before. Our reliance on ads, like I was talking about earlier, and like Marcus was prompting, was so strong that we really didn't know what our audience wanted or where they were in the stages with those slides that Gabby was modeling. So we connected with direct development and we developed these guides. These are content first. They worked with us on the editorial piece, the artistic piece, and then we have implemented them. So you see there is one on biomedical research careers. These are 10-ish, some of them pushing 20, but it really depends on the audience and the approach. Pieces that could be physical, but are mostly meant to be, in our case, these are digital. We do have some display copies at events and things, but we mostly use them in the digital space. So we've got one on pursuing academic versus industry path in biomedical research. So that's more for the middle ground people. We have one on the Tufts MBS program. Not a lot of folks know about bridge programs on the way to dental or med school, for example. So this helps us kind of articulate what we have to offer. It's more about the MBS, and then we get down to Tufts. So this is content first, driving some of those answers to the fact that we're not trying to feed them Tufts first, we're trying to feed them field or content data and information, and then Tufts. Again, Marcus said the dirty word, but we are salespeople at the end of the day. We also did one for public health, which is especially timely, and we kind of centered it around the "you are needed more than ever in this public health landscape" messaging. So we use it in a couple different places. On our website is the most obvious, in social media posts, in back-end content, such as a Slate portal, a back-end of our CRM for particular audiences. And we've considered, but have not yet done what Marcus and company would recommend related to gating it, posting it somewhere where someone has to complete a form, fill out their information to have access to it. So kind of with dangling the carrot related to this piece. We have some considerations about the back end of our website that has been a little bit of a barrier, but ultimately it is best practice to do a gated ebook. So then you can track the actual traffic that came from the ebook downloads and those people's trajectory as opposed to the general use. Hard to like put it out there into the digital universe or even at a fair and not know if folks are going to continue on in your process for after the awareness stage.
And you can, so Ariana talked about a lot of kind of organic ways that she's using her various channels, but you can also pay to promote these things. So you could actually run some digital ads that are driving to download our free guide to public health education or careers in electrical engineering. And students see there's value, so they go to that page and they say, okay, if I want that thing of value, I give my name and email, and that gives you an opportunity to nurture them and connect them with your programs. And if you do that well, let's say you download that guide to MPH at Tufts, you then give them follow-up emails. You lead them to other things. You saw the pathway and the spider web I talked about earlier. You give them other content, lead them to other blog posts that are related to what they downloaded. Maybe you send them to another guide that might be helpful to them as they're deciding further if they're going to apply. Maybe you give them opportunities to connect with admissions reps or to book meetings or to attend events. So all of these things are part of that. You don't just download the guide and then you let them hope that they do something with it. You want to then follow up with other engagement, and that's how this really works well. And if you've done this everything that we've kind of talked about, and I've given you this really a Cliff Note summary version, but you build all this content, blogs, pillar pages, PDF guides, interactive ebooks, quizzes, all of those things. You promote them through organic and paid means, make them sure they're visible to these prospective audiences. And then when they get to them, the key is to give them pathways and engagement opportunities where it's a call to action and sales speak, where you're saying, not only just inquire or apply, that's like the marriage proposal on the first date. It's a little too forward for these students, but instead saying, well, why don't you book a meeting with an advisor, or why don't you download this other content or check out this blog related to this thing, so students can kind of choose their own adventure. And when they're ready, then they engage with your team. So the engine behind all this is what is called inbound marketing, in our case, inbound enrollment marketing. So this is an example from University of Dallas. If you're doing this well, that piece of content that we talked about, and I apologize, it's a little small, kind of lives in the center of this. It's kind of the nucleus of this. And so you drive digital ads and you have organic and SEO efforts and AI efforts, bringing them to a landing page, bringing them to a blog, bringing them to pillar pages in the middle. And they start engaging. They might fill out a form somewhere along the way. You start pointing them to other content. And the goal is this entire web drives your enrollment funnel. And notice how little of this relies on your admissions team getting in here and actively calling or one-on-one emails and doing all this work. If you have the right engine behind this and automation, you can make this happen without a lot of lift for your team. So I know we've kind of pushed close to the end of the hour here. Any questions that we can answer for you here? I'll try to pop over. I don't see a, oh, I do have a few questions that popped up here quickly. So what should we drop? Okay, a lot of these, I'm going to try to get some for our panelists as well. Forgive me that we didn't have so much. Grad ebooks, gated ebooks have been around for so long, you're right. They have been around for a while, but are they as effective as they once were? They absolutely are. And in fact, because AI is picking up on these landing pages, if you optimize your landing page, optimize the pathways to them, you're definitely going to, you're getting more eyeballs and more pathways into that content than we ever had before because AI is available. So I challenge just the thought that they're kind of gone by the wayside. They are actively a good part, and frankly, interactive ebooks, because they're on websites and they're not a kind of static piece. Those are crawlable by the AI engines. So those are in fact actually in many cases a better way to deploy these efforts because you have more content on the front side that can be crawled. Social media content, how are we seeing that affect AI answers? Social media content's being pulled in a lot, especially on Reddit. So if you guys notice that no matter how much we do with the institutional sites, Reddit tends to be the top answer usually for a lot of this content. So having some Reddit awareness and knowing how those are being positioned is important. It's hard. There's a lot of dancing that goes around about how you kind of work with public personas and how much you're kind of interfering with public discourse, which may or may not be helpful to your brand. But those are all part of that. But the more content that you develop that's answering the questions and relevancy, those AI engines are starting to rank them better than some of the Reddit answers, assuming there's a good volume of content that you're producing. Pros and cons of web content written by LLMs. So a lot of people are turning to ChatGPT, Perplexity to help write their own content. So if you were to say, like, I want to write a blog about what I can do with an electrical engineering degree, you might go to ChatGPT and spit that out. The trouble is that that's recognizable and the crawlers know when it's sourced by AI. So we say that it's an assistant, not a producer. That's an important differentiator for whether you're working with a vendor or you're doing this yourself. It's a good way to get started. Maybe it helps produce an outline or a blueprint for content, but you really want to make it your own, certainly speak in your own voice, add faculty or student testimonies or quotes that you can kind of support that, link to your own content. The more content and more links and things that you provide, the better off you're going to be in getting visibility to your content and seen as a thought leader rather than just producing content for content's sake. Percentage of users who click through from AI overviews. Forgive me, I'm reading these quickly, but the question is how many people are actually clicking when they go from AI overviews? Like I said, the HubSpot data shows 60% are stopping there, but 40% give or take, and this could probably be drilled in on specific disciplines to get a more, better answer in terms of unique, if a discipline is performing better than another, but on average, 40% are clicking through. So it's still important both from a click-through perspective, but also just the visibility that you're showing up there at all. If your visibility is just not in these AI overviews, it's a missed opportunity for students who are otherwise going to just see that snippet of information and then bounce. So that's really important to think through. Are these types of content that are most valuable to focus on? Are there types of content that are most valuable to focus on and strategies to then promote that content? There's a lot here. I would look to, so I wanted to ask our panelists, and unfortunately I know we're out of time, but in terms of sourcing content, but think about your own students, think about faculty, think about things that are distinct to your campus that could feed more generic topics. So things that are discipline specific about like, what can I do with a degree in X? What does this career need for educational preparation? How do I pay for graduate school is a good generic topic, but then how can you then feed in some of your school specific content into that blog post? So blogs, interactive ebooks, quizzes to some degree, landing pages, those are all crawlable. So I think that type of content to answer that question is helpful. Videos are always great if you can produce them, particularly if you can put transcripts alongside them. But anything that can be crawled helps this whole AI SEO effort. The PDF ebooks are really valuable for lead generation and giving something of value beyond just an ad that says request information about my program. It's instead download this guide. You're getting better quality inquiries that way, but it's less of an AI, SEO, AEO play and more of a lead generation play for those PDF downloads. So if you're thinking about kind of killing two birds with one stone, having content that's crawlable by Google on SEO will be really helpful. So as a parting kind of share with you all, Dee just produced an SEO and AI visibility playbook for graduate enrollment. So it gets a little bit more in the weeds than what we've been able to do today, to talk about how you can do this and deploy it on your campus. And Sarah's going to share that link for you in the chat so you can download that there. And we can certainly answer any questions that you might have along the way. But I think you'll find that it's really near and dear to DD's heart that our approach is to educate you. I'm not here to sell you on all calling me and trying to work out work here. Certainly, if we can help people, we're happy to do so. But we'd love to lead you and help you so that you can deploy these strategies on your campus. And it's a win for me if you come up to us at CGS in the fall or NAGAP or send us an email and say, I did these things you told us about and it's working really well. That's a win in our book. So we'd love to hear how that's working for you. So I'll pass it back over to Colton, and thanks again for participating today, and thanks to Sabrina and Ariana for their contributions as well.
All right. Thanks, Marcus. Want to echo those thanks. Big thanks to our speakers for being a part of today's webinar. As was shared, the webinar recording will be sent and available on the CGS webinars page. I would encourage all of you that are still here and listening, there will be a survey prompt that pops up. That feedback is incredibly valuable to our presenters. So please do respond to those survey questions. And then looking ahead, these upcoming series webinars that are listed, Noodle is our partner for the February 3rd webinar. So you see the details there on the topic. That is up on a CGS landing page. Registration is live. And the second one that's listed there will be at the end of February. So we should have the landing page and registration live by the end of this month. So keep an eye out on your email and please do attend these fantastic talks as your schedule allows. So thank you all again and enjoy the rest of your afternoon. Take care.